Hello kindred longevity lifestyle designers, this is Govern Hero Secrets of Longevity.com. So I want to do a top 10 movie list of movies on the topic of immortality. There's really not many, if any at all, in terms of the number of movies out there on longevity. There's plenty of documentaries, of course, but in terms of having enough excitement to actually be able to create a movie about a topic like this, there's plenty of movies out there on immortality or have characters that attain it at some point in the movie, or they might even be born that way as something other than human. But for the sake of this list and to kind of keep it condensed just in the realm of the top 10 that I see as being some of the best ones, I'm avoiding talking about movies where the people were born with immortality or where it's a non-human that is immortal, and also situations where someone becomes perpetually living in a different world. Like Groundhog Day, where Bill Murray's caught in that loop. It's kind of more of a time travel movie in some ways than a movie about immortality. This list isn't in any particular order, but number one is definitely my favorite of them all, but everything leading up to that. They're all great movies. Let me know what you think about them if you've seen them in the comments below, and also let me know if there's any other movies about immortality that you particularly like that you want to share, so I could maybe check it out, or other people viewing this can see as well. You can also check out the trailers for these movies in the drop-down menu below in the order that I talk about them. So number 10 is The Fountain by Darren Aronofsky. That's the director, and it is about a man who simultaneously, there's three storylines going on at once, but sort of the main storyline is his search for a cure for cancer that his wife has contracted. He's a medical researcher. And in the other parallel universes at the same time, he's on a similar path of looking for a cure or looking for the fountain of youth, essentially. And there's a lot of really interesting and in-depth topics that are covered in it. So it's a very beautiful movie as well. Some of the scenery is really incredible. Some of the images that are sort of metaphysical are quite inspiring. Number 9 is Dorian Gray by the director Oliver Parker, based on, of course, the novel by Oscar Wilde. And if you're familiar with the story, you know what it's all about. Dorian Gray ends up selling his soul, basically, to have a painting of him turned into this blessing / curse where he becomes immortal, but the painting is what ages, and all the deeds he does that are very dark and sinister end up being reflected in the imagery of the painting. So it's a great movie. There's a few different versions of it. I'm talking about the most recent one, just for the style of it is quite nice. You can always check out the older ones as well, or just read the book. Number 8 is Cocoon. This is a little older. In 1985 that movie came out. It's a sci-fi movie about these sort of cocoon alien-like structures that are pulled up from the bottom of the ocean, and the aliens actually, it was a long time ago I watched this, I'm trying to recall parts of it, but the aliens actually put one of them in a swimming pool for some reason, and lo and behold, a group of elderly people ended up going swimming that night in the pool, and whatever was radiating off the cocoon revitalized them and gave them a lot of rejuvenative qualities. And the whole movie is quite interesting in terms of the things they get up to as a result of their rejuvenation. It's quite hilarious seeing these fairly old people who are cast, old looking, and they were able to play these more lively parts. Unfortunately, it didn't work out so well for Wilford Brimley, as he's the guy on those diabetes commercials. Number 7 is Chronos, one of Guillermo del Toro's first big movies, probably his first big movie. He had a few other things before that, but this was his groundbreaking work. Back in 1993, so it's a little older as well, but it is great in terms of the uniqueness. It's basically a vampire movie, but it's kind of not your traditional vampire movie. I didn't put any other vampire movies on here just because I could do a whole top 10 list and it could all be vampires, because humans turning into this creature that drinks blood and becomes immortal isn't exactly what I'm trying to cover here. But in this movie, it's actually this device that latches onto the hand of the main character, and it makes him need the blood, but it keeps him young. So it's exactly like a vampire, but different. He also has the effect from the light, and yeah, it's a really well done movie. Number 6 is The Wolverine, recent movie with Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackman was also in The Fountain, of course, but in this one, he's faced, compared to the past X-Men movies, he's faced with the challenge of potentially having his immortality taken away. So he is a mutant who is, I guess, born with this super fast healing ability, so it isn't quite what I was saying at the beginning where I wasn't going to talk about people who are born with this quality. But I was debating whether to do a movie like this or The Highlander. The Highlander is more traditional. People associate that with the whole idea of immortality, but that is more just a straight-up action movie, as well as a whole series, and these are people who have lived a long time, and it's more about the battle between good and evil, whereas in this one with the Wolverine, there's actually some interesting things going on, and a more modern and really amazing special effects, but he's with the challenge and the knowledge that he could die after he's had this thing happen where he gets his healing powers turned off. He ends up fighting and finding within himself a bigger drive to be the sort of anti-hero that he is, and to get by and survive. And by the way, The Wolverine is directed by James Mangold. Movie number 5 is Tuck Everlasting. It's a famous novel by Natalie Babbitt, and it's directed by Jay Russell. And there's another version of this that I actually saw when I was younger. And this newer version is a little more in-depth, I thought. It's a great sort of classic American story of a family that has found a spring that they happen to drink from, which happened to be the Fountain of Youth or Fountain of Immortality. It doesn't obviously last because they travel and move on and find that they're living as immortals and no one else is like that, and everyone dies around them. And they see aspects of their life that they were used to falling away and culture progressing. And there's just sort of a lesson of how to appreciate life and what you have that one could get from this movie, and that is sort of the lesson being taught to other people that interacts with the family in the movie as well. Number 4, this one, some people might find it odd it's on here, but when you get to the end of the movie, or closer to the end, you really get the idea as to why it's on here. The Skeleton Key, it's the only one on here that's sort of thriller horror. It was a almost B movie, like not, I mean, it has famous actors and actresses in it, but you know, it has a few weak points in the certain areas, but it really started to come through in the end, I thought, in terms of the uniqueness and the twist at the end, which also touches on this idea of immortality and myths and what some people think is one way of attaining it in that sort of mythological way. I won't go into further detail, obviously, because I don't want to give any more spoilers than that, but to some degree, the spoiler of this being on the list is a little bit of one, but it's still worth checking out. You know, the whole premise is that there's some magic going on in this house that Kate Hudson, the actress, I forget her character's name, is staying at, and it's about trying to find out how malevolent things are going on that is the use of this magic. It's hoodoo, which is an interesting tradition in and of itself. A combination of indigenous American, African, and Western European magic traditions all kind of combined into this eclectic form, which still exists to this day. And by the way, that was directed by Ian Softly. Number 3 is In Time, and that was directed by Andrew Niccol. I was very pleasantly surprised by this movie just because it features the main character is someone that's transitioned from a music career to a movie career, and that's Justin Timberlake. But it was actually quite well done. A very unique concept, sci-fi movie where people are immortal at the age of 25, except they're immortal as long as they have lives left. So they have like a counter on their wrist, like a tattoo that counts down, and they get paid at work in minutes as life. And basically the lowest class of people in society lives the shortest lives. They often run out, or they get it stolen from them, etc. Whereas the higher classes of society, they have more and more lives basically built up. So a lot of them have like 100 years or more as a buffer on their arms for how long they live, and they're just living indefinitely, but physically appearing as if they're 25. So the movie's about Justin Timberlake basically getting a hold of a whole bunch of lives and starting to give them away for free. Movie number 2 is The Man from Earth. It's directed by Richard Schenkman, and this is quite a different movie in the sense that, you know, you're not going to get action out of this. It's a very much a thought-provoking movie, almost like a documentary, except it is made up, clearly. It's about a guy who's just leaving his community, who was working as a professor. He had a number of people around him who he had become close friends with, but he'd been in the community for up to 10 years, and he was moving on. And at the beginning of the movie, you see these people joking with him, like, oh, you haven't aged a day the whole time we've known you, and what's your secret, etc. And as he's packing his stuff up and they're saying their last goodbyes, he decides to sit down and tell them that he's been alive for 14,000 years, since Paleolithic times. He was actually a caveman. It's about him describing all the different things he experienced, but these are academics around him. There's some interesting things that go on with people being really irritated and annoyed, or even harsh with him for seemingly spinning a story which they think is false. But it's just interesting to see how he works with it, and it's just basically the whole movie takes place in the living room with him talking to them. So it's an hour and a half of conversation if you're prepared to watch it, but it's still good. And last but not least, number one, I don't know if people were going to predict this one or not, but it's definitely my favorite one on the list, and that is Dune. It's based on the novel by Frank Herbert. The director is David Lynch, and even some of the characters, or at least one of the characters, Kyle MacLachlan, is in David Lynch's TV series Twin Peaks. And of course you have the well-known cameos from people like Sting in there as well. And, you know, this is another science fiction movie. It's the immortality aspect is that there's this substance on this one planet in the solar system or in the galaxy, which is called the spice, and that's on Dune. And it's it gets harvested and collected, and obviously the richest people get to consume it, and that makes them live longer. But also the people that just live on the planet or have to work on it, they just get a little bit of it that builds up in their body, and you know someone's had it in their system because their eyes start glowing blue for long enough, and that's foretelling that they're going to be living a long time. So yeah, there's a lot of very intriguing concepts in that whole movie, and then, you know, the book is a series of books, so the movie is very short in terms of what the whole series is about. So with that, remember to check out the trailers in the links below. Like, favorite, and share the video if you feel so inclined. Let me know what you think about the different movies I mentioned. And with that, I'll talk to you next time. Take care and embrace life without limits.